Good morning, everybody. This is Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold, Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So I wanted to start out with the stats like I always do, and they're kind of interesting. I'm just trying to see, actually next week will really tell the story if things are increasing or kind of staying the same. Basically, when we're looking at the number of properties that sold this week versus last week, we're actually within 2 in both the single family homes, and we're 3 in the condos and townhomes. So it's the reason that that's kind of weird is because it was the end of the month. So because of the holiday weekend and stuff like that, some of the end of the month actually happened the week before. But, so we'll see. We'll see how it ended up because it's almost like we had 2 weeks that were end of the month. So the single family homes that sold last week, there were a total of 957. 71 of them were under 250, 65 or 85 between 250 and 300, 276 between 3 and 400, 200 between 4 and 5. There were 264 between 500 and a million, and then 81 of them over a million. So when you're looking at all that, something that's kind of interesting that I don't usually talk about, but the price per square foot that's selling, and that kind of, tells you what neighborhood they're in and maybe some of the amenities and all of that kind of thing that they've got with the houses as well. So the interesting thing, under 250, the price per square foot was 163.77. 250 to 300, it went up to 189. 300 to 400, it was at 207. 400 to 500, it went to 219. 500 to a million, it went to 254, and then over a million, it was at 446 a square foot. So, under 250 for the single family homes, like I said, was 163. For the condos, it was 162. From 250 to 300 on the single family homes is 189. It's 194 on the condos. Between 400 and 500, 219 and 245, a little bit higher on the condos, which kind of surprises me that that's what it is. And then 284 for the 500 to a million, and that was 294 on the condos and townhouses. So outside of under 250, the price per square foot on the condos and townhouses is actually a little bit higher. And then you might say, well, what happened over a million? Well, there were no condos that sold over a million this week in regards to what's going on. So the median price for the single family homes is basically that number is 425,000. The number stayed the same for condos and townhomes, and that was 300,000. So I think that it comes down to, which is really interesting to me, is that it looks like basically the condos and townhomes and the single family homes, when it comes to price per square foot, are really about the same when it comes down to it. But there's just a lot more single family homes that are more on the higher end than there are on the condos and townhomes. So that, I think, is pretty interesting and something to really look at. So we've got a very stable market. As you can see, the prices aren't varying too much, and the number of homes that are selling are very close. Like I told you, it's within a couple, 2 or 3 new homes on the market. The inventory did increase on the single family homes by 127 and by 44 on the condos. So when we're looking at the months of inventory, we're still looking right around for the single family homes at 3.39. When we're looking at the condos and townhomes, we're looking at 503. So all in all, when you're looking at it and deciding, what you want to do, you've really got to do your homework then when it comes to the specific neighborhoods and what's under 250 and what's in that area and all of that kind of stuff. So again, when we're looking at these, we're looking at 5 counties. So we're looking at Orange, Osceola, Seminole, Lake, and Polk. So all of those counties together are what we're looking at. So obviously, if we were just to look at Orange County, we would have a different scenario, as well as, all of the other ones as well. And then you go into school districts, you go into zip codes, you go into subdivisions. All of those things definitely make a difference when you're looking at what the numbers are. So I guess that my word of analysis and everything for this week is that everything is very stable. We'll look and see next week to see if the number of total properties and everything goes down, because we were at in the 700s, but now for the last 2 weeks we're at 900. But that's kind of because of the end of the month, I believe. And so I'm going to check it out and see what it is. So even if it is at the end of the month, June was definitely a higher month, because if we have 900, that's a couple hundred more than our normal, and we had that 2 weeks in a row. So it'll be interesting to see in regards to what's going on. So I'm going to talk a little bit about new construction and really what's going on there. There was an article that came out. It was a new study that shows Florida's new home market varies widely, from luxury level pricing in Miami to larger pockets of new home sales in Lakeland and Cape Coral and that kind of thing. Now, the interesting thing that I see in here is that, how I separate out the new homes. I mean, not the new homes, but I separate out the homes from the condos and townhomes. So the numbers that they're using here are including the condos and townhomes, whereas the new construction are new homes. So I think that you really need to compare homes to homes, which they aren't in this study. So I'm going to go ahead and make ours home, apples to apples. So what they're saying is that all home prices in Orlando are at 380. So that's taking the 300,000 average on the condos, townhomes, and then taking that with the average of the single family homes at 430. And so it's coming out to 380. Whereas, we're sitting right around 420, 425. We were at 425 this week, as I just mentioned, for our median price. So the amount of a new home on average in the Orlando market is 430. So 20,000 or 10,000 more is all it is from this week. Actually, it's only 5,000 more. 425 to 430 is only $5,000. So when you're looking at that and you're looking at the number of all sales in 2025, there were 32,000 sales in the Orlando market. 8,762 were new home sales. So 8,762 new homes were put into place here in the Orlando market. And so that's 27% of our market was new home sales. So that kind of goes along with people moving into the area and where they're going to be and all of that kind of good stuff when you're looking at that. And I think, and another area that's obviously close by is Lakeland, that it's saying that the price is 285, which I'm sure it's a little bit higher than that as well because of the condos and townhomes. But the new home price there is 312. So 430 for Orlando, 312 for Lakeland. So what we kind of have is everything in between there then, right? And Deltona is at 359 for the price of new homes. So, and 359 is probably kind of closer to, like Winter Haven and Haines City and Davenport and that kind of stuff. Davenport, you can get into the 400s for sure, but depending on where it's at in those places and everything. So basically, when you're looking at those areas, those are kind of close to us: Deltona, Lakeland, and Orlando. Basically, what it comes down to. So Orlando, 27% of the properties that were sold were new homes. So that's a big number. Deltona, 23% were new homes, and Lakeland was 58%. So they're saying that there were 9,882 homes sold in Lakeland, not just homes, also all sales, and 5,767 of them were new. So that is a huge number in regards to what's going on in Deltona. There were 13,141 total sales and 3,075, and that's where we got to that 23%. So I think that that's really interesting. Now, if you're looking at Miami, the average new home price is $1,075,000. So they're not building in that everyday guy, kind of house, because their average price is $475,000 and the new home price is $1,075,000. So there's a big dichotomy there. That's like 600,000 according to this thing. So, and the new home sales in Miami was only 4%. So that's a huge difference as well. So as you guys know that we're always talking about that there's new people moving to the area and where are they going and what are they doing. And so the new homes are definitely a big factor when it comes to homes in Central Florida. And basically the builders have made the interest rates affordable, which is why they've got such a huge percentage too. They might take 20 or 30,000 and actually buy down the interest rate so more people qualify for that home. And so as a result of that, that's what's going on as well. So there's a lot of dynamics there, and there's a lot of things to look at when you come to the new homes, whether it's a CDD or an HOA, and a lot of people don't know what that is until you know about it and you look at it and everything. And so I'm going to cover that a little bit in the next segment, but in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we'll see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. This is Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold, Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So I was looking at, first of all, we were talking about the new builds and everything. And the thing that I thought was very interesting when it comes to all of that is that there are a lot of CDDs and HOAs and all of that kind of stuff. So you're going, what do those letters mean, and how does it affect me, and all of that kind of stuff. So basically, what the bottom line is that it used to be that if a builder was going to build a community, they would come in and they would put in all the infrastructure, and that would come out of their pocket and everything, and then they would share it with all of the homeowners as they bought properties in that area. So if they were putting together a clubhouse, a fitness center, community pool, park, tennis courts, pickleball courts today, basketball courts, all those kinds of things, that was something that the builders did up front. And then when somebody came into the community, it's like, hey, see, you're going to get all of this stuff. And so then as time has gone on, probably the first ones I heard of were probably close to 30 years ago, and they probably existed before that, but that's when I found out about them. And basically what a CDD is, it's a community district development. And so what that is that now they go ahead and they float tax bonds to pay for that infrastructure. So if they're going to build, those fitness centers or communities and all of that kind of good stuff, maybe it's just putting down the roads. If it's a gated community, maybe it's putting out the street lights, all of those kinds of things that happen in the development of a community. They are now a bond that is floated, and so then that goes as a part of the taxes. And it's very common in Celebration was one of the first places that I know that had it. The villages have bonds and all of that kind of stuff, and in the villages when houses are being sold, it's very common for them to say our bond is paid off, and that kind of thing, because it becomes part of the taxes. Now there's a bond portion of it that is that what was floated for that infrastructure. And then the second part of it is the maintenance. So obviously the maintenance is always going to be there and everything like that. But it's definitely part of the taxes. So I know there's one area, and I'm not going to say what the name of it is, but, back in the day, the houses were for sale when the market went down to nothing, down to 100,000 for those houses. And the unfortunate part was that the taxes had a $2,000 CDD portion in them for every house. So if you bought a $100,000 house in that neighborhood versus any other in Osceola County, because it was in Osceola County, you had to pay an extra $2,000 in taxes because of the CDD. So there were some people I know that I was taking out, and we were looking at them, and they were considering that area. But when we went to do our homework before we put in the offer, we discovered that $2,000 was going to be there, which ends up being close to $200 extra a month. That was going to raise their payment significantly, and so they didn't go ahead and do it. And so, if you're looking at a $400,000 house today and it's $2,000 more in taxes, it might not seem as significant, but it was glaring at that point in time. But it is glaring for a lot of people regardless when you're looking at that. So that's the CDD, Community District Development, that's part of your taxes. Then in communities, in addition to that, they have the Homeowners Association, which is the HOA. And that's where you have to go for your architectural reviews and all of that kind of stuff. And in many communities where the CDD is there, they've just got like $100 a year HOA. So people look at those communities and they're like, wow, it's only $100 a year HOA. Well, they don't necessarily realize or know that obviously there are a lot more expenses that are going into it and everything as well with the CDD. So my point is, when you're looking at neighborhoods and you're looking at those kinds of things, when you're looking online and seeing, what the taxes are or something like that, it's not something that I would ever count on what the current owner has for taxes, because they're going to reset when you purchase them, when you purchase that property. So most of the counties, if not all of them today, have where you go on a specific address and you're looking at it, and they're saying, would you like a tax estimate? And so they'd say, how much are you going to be paying for the house? And are you going to be having homestead and all of those kinds of things? And then it will calculate out what the price of the taxes is going to be. And so they give you a range, which is usually within $500 or so, but it's going to have those non-ad valorem things in there that are extra, like the CDD. So it's something that you need to make sure that you keep track of, know, and all of that kind of good stuff. And so that's just a little follow-up from when we were talking about new construction, of something that you need to look at and look for so that you've got your eyes wide open when it comes down to it. So the next thing that I'd like to talk about is actually the 21st Century Road to Housing Act, which was just passed and actually became law on July 11th, which was yesterday. And so this is actually supposed to be something that will help with the housing affordability and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm going to go through some of the points of it so that everybody knows about it, and maybe there's something that you can use on it. One of the things that probably doesn't apply to anyone here is the corporate limits, that it restricts large institutional investors owning 350 or more single family homes from buying extra properties. So what this is these are the companies that buy and hold. Now, there's a lot of companies out there that will buy and then they'll resell. So they're not holding on to it. They're just giving sellers options in regards to what they've got going on or what they can do. So as long as they don't own 350 of them at a time, from my understanding, and I'd have to check into it deeper, they should be okay. And so, but if they're going to be holding on to them, which, there are several owners in our area that own 1,000 or more houses, and that's what they're trying to avoid, is so that the individual person has the opportunity to buy those houses too. Now, HUD, which is the Department of Housing and Urban Development, if they back up the FHA loans, if they foreclose on those houses, those properties are available first 21 days only to owner occupants. So no investors, even if they don't own any houses, can come and purchase them. So that's one thing that, that they've always had. So the government has always tried to protect the individual owner above the investor in the first place. And so that's the first thing about that. Next comes the supply boost that they're trying to allocate millions in grants and eases pre-review designs to speed up new home construction. So when so here's basically what the bottom line is. So they're going to have aggressive supply boosts, which they're going to have pre-reviewed blueprints. So builders can access a catalog of pre-approved housing designs, and then this bypasses slow architectural approvals and accelerates construction. Another one is that they're going to have zoning and design flexibility, where HUD is going to set guidelines for point access block buildings, allowing up to 6-story apartments to use a single internal stairway. This legalizes European-style space-efficient infill housing. So not sure I'm too excited about that, but, in some areas, I think that will probably be good. They're going to slash environmental delays. It creates broader environmental review exemptions under NEPA for fast-tracked urban infill projects and commercial office to residential conversions. So that's going to be happening. And then targeted cash injections. It allocates $200 million grant program to cities that actively remove local regulatory border barriers to construction. So that's one thing. Now, going back on the corporate property restrictions, the 350 home limit, any Wall Street firm or institutional investor that already owns 350 or more single-family homes is prohibited from buying additional ones. This keeps starter homes available for everyday families. The build-to-rent sell-off, investors who construct new homes specifically to lease them out must sell those properties after 7 years. And tenants' right of first refusal. Current renters get the first opportunity to purchase those build-to-rent homes once the 7-year window expires. So that's all part of that corporate property thing that I was talking about. And then the financing and mortgage changes. There's an FHA small dollar pilot that expands low down payment FHA mortgages for homes under $100,000. Banks previously avoided these because they were unprofitable, shutting out lower income buyers. Now, we don't have that situation in Central Florida because we don't have any under $100,000 homes, but there are people that I know that wanted to get loans for just like $60,000, $75,000, and they were having a really hard time to do that. And so this should help that. Now, there is, secondly, in the mortgage and financing changes, multifamily and prefab release. That increases the maximum loan limits for manufactured housing and apartment complexes and eliminates the rule requiring mobile homes to have permanent chassis to ease financing friction. And then they are also empowering small banks, which loosens lending restrictions on community banks and credit unions, freeing them to up to fund local builders and buyers. And what else is in the bill is that there is disaster relief and repair. It permanently authorizes the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Program and creates a whole home repair grant pool for low-income homeowners. And then they're saying that the digital dollar ban prohibits the Federal Reserve from issuing a central bank digital currency until December 31st, 2030. So basically, that's kind of in a nutshell what that bill is that went into effect yesterday. So just wanted to let everybody know that that was kind of what the situation was in regards to that. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we'll see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. This is Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold, Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407 566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So I wanted to go over today a couple of things that I thought were really interesting. There was Best Interest Financials 2026 Future Home Buyer Report. And it found that 95% of Americans who plan to buy a home in the next 5 years say something is keeping them from purchasing now. And so I went through this. I think it's very interesting, but I think that the thing is that most people think they know what the scoop is, but they don't really know what the scoop is. I think most people can afford probably what they want now, but they just don't know how to navigate around it. So the 48%, their top barrier is high home prices. 33% high mortgage rates are something that contribute, and obviously it's going to end up more than 100% because people said more than one thing. But inability to afford a down payment, 33%. Concern about affording monthly mortgage payments, 40%. And limited buying power with 63% say they can spend less than the median U.S. home price. And then a lack of confidence in their knowledge of the home buying process is more than half of future buyers. And that one right there is what I think is what hits the nail on the head, is the lack of confidence in their knowledge and knowing what it is and probably knowing where to go. Because you really have to know where to go to find that knowledge, right? And to be working with people that are really going to help you through that. You know, I was working with a buyer today, actually yesterday, that they just had their inspection on the house that they're buying, and they had some questions about it. You know, they were thinking that this house is almost perfect. It's 10 years old, but it doesn't have any blemishes or anything on it. I mean, it's got a couple of settling cracks in the stucco and that kind of stuff that when you paint, you fill that in and everything's great. And, but they were concerned about a couple of things. And so when we went through them, they realized that they really were nothing. I mean, there was, that when you have a garbage disposal and the thing that's at the top, that rubber piece that everything goes down, that was missing. And so that it wasn't that the garbage disposal wasn't working. It was just that rubber piece that was missing that probably is under $10 to get that fixed. And, so it was just that kind of little stuff and there were only like 2 or 3 things on the report even that were little things like that. So it was a very clean home. But, it's like when you're looking at that big report and, it's like, this is something that you should pay attention to. And this is something that, should be a cause of alarm, or whatever. It's like you're looking at it and you're going, what in the world is this? And there was a couple that I helped buy a house a couple of months ago. And basically, when the report came back, man, this house sounded like it was absolutely terrible. And the first initial reaction for the buyer was, well, I need to either get out of this house or I need $60,000 to repair the things that are going on with it. And so what we did is I had a couple of contractors go in there and actually give quotes in regards to what it was going to cost. And it was some dry rot on the outside, that were some moisture damage and stuff like that because of the way that the water was pooling on the siding and that kind of thing. So it ended up that it was $5,000. So that was something that the seller was willing to give them a credit for and everything like that. But $50,000, no way. But the way that it was portrayed initially, and even the contractor that one of the contractors that went out there said, he said, I was expecting that this was going to be like crazy amount of work and that it was going to be like $40,000 the way that report read. But he said, when I went out there and looked at it, he said it was like $5. And so basically, when you've got to be actually looking at the real facts when that stuff comes down there. But you've got to have someone to help you navigate through those waters is probably my point as well. When you're looking at the price of the homes, yes, in many cases, they might be higher than you'd like to see them. But, you know, and even with the mortgage rates, if you can get a seller, just like you can get a builder to pay $30,000 and buy down the rate, then potentially, you know, you're going to be able to afford it in the way that you would like it to be. And so if you wait for those rates to go down and the market goes crazy, then the prices are probably going to go up. And then on the other side of that, you're going to be in a multiple offer situation. You're not going to be in the driver's seat, and you're going to have a really tough time doing it. One of the things that's really good about our market right now is that seller concessions is common, and sellers are giving them all day long to buyers. So what that means is that they're helping them with their closing costs. They're helping them, so they're giving them credits so that they don't have to bring as much money to closing, is basically what it is. And on a conventional loan, the seller is allowed to give up to 3% of the purchase price to the buyer as a concession, you know, to help them get the house. With an FHA loan, it's 6%. So that's a huge amount of money that is possibly available. There are also grants out there that help people get that down payment and everything like that. And, if you're in a rural area, which means you're probably not in Orange County that you're going to be purchasing, but there are United States Department of Agricultural loans, USDA loans, that you can get 100% financing. And if you're a veteran, then you can totally get 100% financing. And there's a couple of things I'm going to be talking about that in the next segment. But basically, the bottom line is that I think that if you're out there and you're considering buying and you're thinking, I can't do it now, I think you really need to find out if you can or can't, as opposed to just assuming you can't or assuming that this is what the situation is. Because I think that when it comes down to it and you're looking at how much it is to rent versus how much it is to buy, the difference is very small. I was talking to this guy the other day who did buy a brand new house and wants to rent it out. Now he is going to be getting for rent the exact same amount as what his payment is. Exact same. So basically the bottom line is he's going to get a really good, he's got the tenant that's going to pay all of his expenses and everything. And he did have that 3% down is what he did, or I think he did a 3% down loan or something like that. And so he's got that 3% out. But outside of that, he's getting his mortgage paid off. He's gathering up equity and all of that kind of good stuff. But my point is not that you have to invest or anything like that. If you want to, that's another good thing that you could do. But if you're out there paying rent, you're going to be paying the same amount in rent that someone is paying for their payment that's purchasing it. And so if we can get the seller to help you with those closing costs, you're going to need less money down. You can actually get gifts from people when it comes to your down payment in certain circumstances. And so there are a lot of options out there and things to look at and to investigate to really make it happen. So my word of caution is don't think that find out. Just give me a call and I'm happy to help you, or find somebody else that can really help you as well. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we'll see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. This is Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold, Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about what's going on with some VA updates. So VAs are veteran updates, and what it really does is it helps veterans buy and stay put. So the VA updated their appraisal requirements for VA-backed purchases and launched a new partial claim option for veterans in default that basically is something that could really help them. So the Department of Veterans Affairs made 2 home loan updates that could matter at different points in the housing conversation, one for veterans using VA financing to buy a home and one for veterans trying to avoid foreclosure. So the VA updated its appraisal process tied to minimum property requirements, the standards a property must meet for VA guaranteed loan. And the agency said that the changes are meant to reduce delays, remove outdated rules, and help veteran buyers move faster in a competitive market. The updates include changes to radon requirements, pre-1978 property standards, detached improvements, and non-vented heaters. VA said the average VA appraisal took about 7 business days as of May 31st. The updates point to the need for clear expectations in VA-backed transactions, steady communication among all parties, and lender guidance for buyers with specific loan questions. So what that means is basically they're trying to speed things up a little bit. And I know that back in the day when I first started in real estate, which was 20 years ago, there were stigmas in regards to you didn't want an FHA loan, somebody buying your house. You didn't want somebody buying your house with a VA loan because they were really picky and all of that kind of good stuff. And I have never found that to be the truth in regards to how that all works. With VA, we want to make sure that when they do that VA appraisal, they want to make sure that everything's working, and that's basically what the bottom line is. So the kitchen's got to be working, the AC's got to be working, plumbing, all of the things that you would want to be working when you buy a house. They don't want that veteran to be buying the house and then find out that they've got a lot of challenges that they didn't know about. So, most people all know all those things as well because you're doing inspections and you're finding those things out before you actually go and to that final step of purchasing the home. But the VA always went a step further, and their VA appraisal checked a lot of those things too. So they're just speeding everything up. I don't have any problem with that stuff. And the seller's got to know that if you've got those kinds of latent problems that are in your house, everybody's going to have a problem with them, but somebody is not going to be able to get a VA loan, like if your AC is not working or something like that, but you're going to get a lower price on your house if the AC isn't working either. So it comes down to all of those things. Now, in regards to veterans being able to potentially avoid foreclosure, they launched a partial claim program to help veterans in default avoid foreclosure. Under the program, mortgage servicers identify eligible veterans, place them on a 3-month payment plan, and after successful completion, they use the partial claim to bring the loan current. So basically what that means, if you're behind in your mortgage and you're a veteran and you've got a VA loan, you can go and you can talk to them and ask them about this partial claim program. If you make your payments on time and make them as you should for 3 months, then your loan is going to be current, and I'm sure that the payments will go on the back end or whatever. But basically, it will definitely help avoid foreclosures. VA said servicers helped 173,000 veterans avoid foreclosure in fiscal year 2025. For homeowners under financial stress, the program is another reason to contact your mortgage servicer or VA before assuming foreclosure or rush sale is the only path forward. And I think that, with a lot of what I've been saying today is that it just comes down to education, right? In knowing what is out there, what's available to you, what's going on, what you can do, and all of those kinds of things. I mean, the bottom line is many people have many more options than they think they do. You might say, oh, I'm behind, I don't know what to do, but I promise you that there are options and there are things out there that we can look at, and it's not too late to see if there are things that you can do if you want to save your home, or if you do want to take all the equity out of it and go somewhere else or something like that. I mean, there's always options, but there are programs out there that can help you, and the lenders don't want these houses back if you're in financial straits. They don't want them because they're going to lose more money. They want to work through it with you and make a plan that's going to work for everybody. And that's basically what I have found over the years that everybody's looking for. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we will see you next week. Have a great one, everybody. Bye-bye.